What if Rimuru Tempest's most brilliant plan was never about conquering an army, but about disarming a heart? Sit with that for a second before I tell you what's really going down in Tensura Season 4, because that question isn't rhetorical. It's the exact reason the fourth season of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime is being called, without exaggeration, the most ambitious chapter in the entire franchise. 5 cores, over 60 episodes, a war that isn't about swords. It's about entire empires deciding whether to coexist or destroy each other. And right at the center of it all is Rimuru, doing exactly what nobody, not even the most devoted light novel fans, expected him to do: negotiate or everyone expected battle. Let me catch you up real quick, because context is everything here. After the Founding Festival, after Rimuru finally secures diplomatic recognition for Tempest, what we get isn't a happily ever after. It's the start of a far more dangerous political game. The Judah-Tempest Federation starts moving towards something massive: the human-monster coexistence sphere. Sounds beautiful on paper, right? But every time someone tries to tear down barriers that stood for centuries, there's always somebody who sees that as an existential threat instead of progress. And that's exactly where the real villain of this arc steps in. And no, it's not a monster, it's not some raging demon lord. It's Granbell Rosso, former hero and head of the 5 elders of the kingdom of Siltroso, along with his granddaughter, Mariabell Rosso. Hold on to that name because she's coming back throughout this whole script. Mariabell. She represents something arguably scarier than any army: quiet manipulation. The war fought behind closed doors, far from the eyes of the people. Now, for anyone following the anime that's been airing since April 2026, and yes, we're talking global simultaneous streaming on Crunchyroll, the first episode's already made one thing clear: this isn't going to be another filler arc season, or repeat that pacing problem Season 3 caught heat for. Remember that infamous meeting arc that drove fans up the wall? Studio 8-Bit listened, and their answer was drastic. Instead of trimming things down, they went bigger. 5 cores, 15-month on air. That's the kind of treatment usually reserved for shonen giants like One Piece. Why does that matter to you right now? Because it means one thing: they're not cutting corners. The war that's coming, the Eastern Empire invasion arc, is going to be told without rushing, without cheap shortcuts. And honestly, if you've ever been burned by adaptations that gut character development just to squeeze into 12 episodes, this is proof that sometimes waiting actually pays off. But here's the part I really want you to feel. While fans were bracing for an epic clash of raw power, spell against spell, what Rimuru's actually doing is the exact opposite. He's playing emotional chess. And that's where we get to the real plan nobody saw coming. Picture this for a second. You built a nation from absolute nothing. No army, no wealth, not even a permanent human body. And yet, through patience and careful alliances, you built something kings would take generations to achieve. Now, picture someone on the other side of the world looking at that nation and thinking, this is a threat that needs to be crushed before it grows too big. That's the Eastern Empire, a military and magical superpower so overwhelming it makes Tensura's old villains, yes, even Clayman, even Hinata Sakaguchi, look, and this is the word fans keep using, amateur. We're talking about a technological and arcane force so advanced it completely rewrites the power scale we thought we understood from this series. And here's the twist that catches everyone off guard. Rimuru knows he can't just smash this enemy with Ifrit, with Diablo, with Benimaru. He knows, because crushing the Eastern Empire by force wouldn't actually solve anything. It would just leave a power vacuum for the next threat to fill. Rimuru's real plan, the one nobody in the fandom saw coming with this much clarity, is to completely redraw the continent's geopolitical balance, not through conquest, through compromising the enemy to a point where war simply stops being the profitable move. Have you ever stopped to think about how much this reflects who Rimuru really is? He was an ordinary Japanese man before becoming a slime. He carries values no other demon lord carries. He genuinely cares about collective well-being, not just power. And that strange mindset by that world's standards becomes his secret weapon. Now, there's a name that's been sending the fandom into a frenzy in recent episodes: Yuuki. If you've caught the latest episodes, you know exactly what I mean. That uneasy feeling of watching someone you kind of trusted, kind of doubted, get revealed as a controlled piece in a much bigger game. Yuuki being manipulated, possibly by Mariabell, possibly by forces even hidden behind that, completely changes how we understand the alliances in this quiet war. And this is where I need you to take a breath for a second, because this part of the story carries real emotional weight. Broken trust hurts in a way a sword never could. When you realize someone standing beside you might be a puppet being moved by someone else's hand, the question that lingers is, who else? Who else in this seemingly stable world might be a piece on the board without even knowing it? That kind of psychological tension, not physical combat, is what's defining this new era of Tensura. Let's talk about why this Rimuru strategy is so smart and so risky at the same time. Rimuru's entire foundation of power has always been built on one simple principle: unity through difference. He brought together goblins, ogres, lizardmen, elves, even former demon lords under one banner, not through domination, but through mutual recognition. Every ally he won by giving something back: protection, purpose, a sense of belonging those races had never had before. Now, apply that same logic on a continental scale, against an empire that sees this entire philosophy as a dangerous ideological weakness. The Eastern Empire doesn't fear Rimuru for his military might. They fear him because his ideas is contagious. If monsters and humans can genuinely thrive together in the Judah Tempest Federation, that threatens the very power structure holding up traditional empires built on rigid hierarchy and fear of the other. And that's exactly why Rimuru's response can't be pure military force. If he wins purely by strength, he proves the enemy's point, that power is the only language that matters. But if he wins through diplomacy, through exposing the empire's internal corruption, through dismantling Mariabell's manipulation before it sparks a full-blown war, then he proves there's another way. That's the true goal behind his strategy. But here's the danger. This kind of long game demands a level of patience that can cost lives along the way. Every month Rimuru spends trying to resolve this through influence and alliances is a month Granbell and Mariabell keep pushing their own plans forward in the shadows. It's a race against a clock that makes no sound at all until it goes off. Think about it. How many times in real life do we face situations exactly like this, where the fastest solution looks like direct confrontation, but the more lasting one demands a kind of strategic patience nobody's sure will actually pay off? That dilemma is universal, and it's exactly why even people who've never watched an isekai before are connecting with this season in a completely different way. And what makes all of this even heavier is that the source material behind this story, Fuse's light novels, has already wrapped, ending at volume 23. That means Studio 8-Bit has the full roadmap for every character's fate. Season 4 is set to adapt volumes 10, 11, and 12, covering the nation founding arc. But given how massive this season is, 5 times the length of a normal season, it's almost certain the adaptation goes well beyond that. Some media analysts are already saying that at this pace, this could be the season that effectively wraps up more than half of the entire saga. Before the season officially kicked off, fans already got an important preview: the film Tensei Shitara Slaimu Dataken Sokai no Namidahen, or Tears of the Azure Sea, which hit Japanese theaters in February 2026. That film works as a direct narrative bridge into this new phase, connecting Season 3's ending with the conflicts now exploding across the Eastern Empire. And the timing of all this isn't an accident. Production is clearly playing the long game here, just like Rimuru himself inside the story. A movie in February, 2 consecutive cores starting in April, and 3 more cores arriving in separate windows, keeping the Judah Tempest Federation and the hype around it alive for over a full year. Miho Okazaki is still voicing Rimuru, keeping that emotional continuity fans have recognized from the very beginning. And visually, despite the massive scale of this season, Studio 8-Bit remains at the helm of the animation, which brings a real sense of relief for anyone worried about a drop in quality during such a huge expansion. Now, let me ask you something you might not have considered yet. What happens when a leader who's always believed in peaceful solutions is forced for the first time to admit that diplomacy alone might not be enough? Because that's exactly what's being built here. Every episode pushes Rimuru closer to a decision point that will define not just the outcome of this war, but who he really is when every other option runs out. The Eastern Empire isn't going to back down just because Rimuru is kind. Mariabell isn't going to stop moving pieces on the board just because it's morally wrong by her standards. At some point, and fans following the latest episodes can already feel this tension building, Rimuru is going to have to choose between holding on to the philosophy that's defined his entire journey or doing something he swore he'd never do. And that's exactly where this plan nobody saw coming takes on a second meaning, because maybe Rimuru's real plan isn't just beating the Eastern Empire. Maybe it's proving, even under extreme pressure, there's a way to win without becoming the very thing he's fighting against. So here's the question I want to leave you with before you jump to the next episode. If you were in Rimuru's position, with all that power available to end everything in one single strike, would you have the patience to wait, or would the fear of losing everything make you strike first?